Please help me welcome to the platform our presider this morning, Miss Suzanne Jensen. I had to look back. I had a senior moment. All right, good. So let's all take a deep, conscious breath. Release. Allow ourselves to use the breath to surrender to this eternal now moment as we come together for our call to service, which we call lighting the flames of faith. And we perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples, all faiths, all sentient beings come from the one great universal presence, which we call spirit. That fundamental to this truth is the unifying nature of all religious thought and experience, which we honor here this morning. So, as Suzanne lights the first candle, it's for the Tao, honoring the universal path of harmony and equilibrium, the natural way. We light the second candle for shamanic traditions, honoring the beliefs and practices of all indigenous peoples, the way of primal spirituality. We light the third candle for Hinduism, honoring the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. We light the fourth candle for Judaism, honoring the ethical path of living by sacred law. We light the fifth candle for all forms of Buddhism, honoring the Four Noble Truths and the path of compassion. The sixth candle we light for all forms of Christianity, honoring the Christ consciousness as the path of love. The seventh candle we light for all forms of Islam, honoring the path of submission to the will of God as the highest calling. We light the eighth candle for the universalistic religion of Baha'i, honoring the path of unity and peace. The ninth candle we light for all forms of new thought, honoring the metaphysical path of mental healing through the practice of universal spiritual principles. The 10th candle we light for all those who are as yet unaware of the power and presence of spirit in their lives, and for the space we hold for them here at our center. And as Suzanne lights the healing candle, please put silently into the light the names of anyone you wish to have experience the healing flame of God's eternal love.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and I see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets us free. There is only
I'm aware of the infinite life that is God this morning. I release all limitation and open to the infinite creative joy that is expressing as this day. I'm grateful for this sacred space and all who showed up here to commune in open-heartedness, awake, aware, and speaking our truth in word, music, song, and interaction. I know that this service now unfolds in spontaneous, blissful perfection and blesses us all in the flow of love and grace. I now release this declaration to the law of mind, so thankful for knowing that it is already done, as we acknowledge this together in saying, and so it is. Good morning. The courage to surrender. I just finished reading an article titled The Courage to Surrender, and this article in Science of Mind magazine speaks to complete surrender to life, to God. Letting go of everything that does not serve us, that which holds us back from proclaiming and accepting our God selves, and about having the courage to let go of all attachments. When I first read Letting Go of All Attachments, it struck me deeply. I felt like this is a very tall order. I had to stop and fully take the meaning of that in for a minute. It may have been the first time that I considered it so completely, so deeply. I wondered for myself if it was even possible for me to let go of all attachments. I sensed that I was probably not fully aware of all of my attachments. So this is about complete surrendering, including surrendering perhaps to those things that we thought made up our lives, but no longer work. For instance, maybe a long-term relationship, a marriage, a job. Surrendering means living life quite courageously, in consciousness, in complete faith, in absolute trust, grounded in our bodies, firsthand living and being. The article points out that the origin of the word courage is from the French word coeur, C-O-E-U-R, which means heart. So to have courage means to have heart. Science of Mind magazine says this: it takes heart to make great changes. It takes heart to be and do and have the life you came to live. So complete surrender means not only surrendering to what does not serve or what no longer works, but on the other side, surrender to our good. Allowing good to come to us from expected and unexpected channels. Not having any attachment to how our good shows up. In Science of Mind, we speak of not outlining, allowing God or the universe to orchestrate. But I got a deeper sense from this article, going kind of just beyond that. Because of this article, I had a sudden awareness of some of my own attachments that I maybe not have been aware of before. Limited beliefs, my ideas about life. It took me deeper into myself. And I see now that when we have preconceived ideas or notions of how things are supposed to be, to show up, or how to show up, or how things are supposed to be, we are blocking the present highest good from flowing into our lives. We are standing in our own way of receptivity. And somehow I saw this very clearly, directly. I saw myself doing it. I asked myself, am I able to release all of my attachments? Well, I might have to be really present to be aware of any attachments within me that I've overlooked. I'm experiencing it more broadly, in a broader way. So when we release all attachment, that means not only attachments to how our good shows up, but also an attachment to how life shows up. In our trust, we simply allow things to be just as they are. So we then start to surrender to the joy that life has to offer. We surrender to our wisdom, passion, gifts, and talents. We surrender to the magnificent beings we came here to be. Here are a couple of affirmations that I'd like to share and close with. The secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. Today, I claim my freedom. I am free to create a life filled with joy, passion, and laughter. I am free. There is good all around me. I surrender to it now. I am guided and directed to experience only the highest and best. I surrender to the power of God. That is me. Namaste.
Hey, Mike, can I get my guitar on for 1 second? Good morning, everybody. A pleasure to see you. It is my honor to tell you that my good friend David Olivas has a birthday. I remember David. I tried to play it cool. First time, right? I played that one off good. So, in honor of David's birthday, just as I was coming up here, it is also Mike Carlin's birthday today. And I found out my other good friend, Mike Carlin. So here we go, singing to both of them. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, David and Mike. Happy birthday to you. Right. I was excited to do that, Dave. David accepts checks, money orders, but prefers cash. Okay, now I'm excited. I gotta come down. What's your tempo? Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Just as soon as I feel spirit, what makes us free? It is the one that holds us in open arms for you and for me. I want to thank you because you brought me. I want to thank you, Spirit, because you taught me. I want to thank you because you blessed me. I want to thank you because you never left me. And I want to sing hallelujah. Just want to shout this morning that my soul looks back and wonder at how I got over, how I got over. My soul looks back and wonder at how I got over. I'm gonna wear a diadem, celebrate and never condemn. I'm gonna walk those streets of gold in the heartland of the soul. I'm gonna be a host in white who travel both day and night. I'm gonna sing in the joyful choir. I'm gonna sing and I'll never get tired. And I'm gonna sing hallelujah. I just wanna shout this morning that my soul looks back and wonders how I got over, how I got over. I wanna say hallelujah.
It's church up in here today, right? Woo! That was great. Thank you so much. Let's give her another round of applause, please. And the wonderful band that we're so privileged to have. What a great start to a great day. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to highlight some of our wonderful events that are going on. First, I have some sad news. I guess it's sad if you call it sad, but losing somebody is always sad. We had a longtime member here named Mel Chesney. Mel used to sit right about where Marty's sitting. And he was tall and white-haired and always had this tan. And he was hard of hearing. Maybe some of you remember him. Anyway, we got news that he passed away following an extended illness. And as soon as we have more information on the services, we will keep you posted. So our extended heartfelt prayers and condolences to his family and anybody who knew and loved him. So the Law of Attraction Study Group meets today, facilitated by Mike Carlin, and I want you to know that today is a 2-hour class. It's usually an hour and a half, but today's group session will be 2 hours. This week coming up, we have Visioning with Reverend Mike on Wednesday, January 23rd at 6 o'clock. We meet in his office for a quick visioning. Usually it's facilitated by Judy, and she does a wonderful job with the visioning. And followed by that, we have our Get Real and Heal meditation service at 7 o'clock. Bereavement Support Group is coming up on January 27th, next Sunday at 1 o'clock. And there are some upcoming classes that you might want to know about, and there are sign-ups in Sparks Hall. I know Reverend Nancy and I are going to be doing a Emma Curtis Hopkins class on the last Thursday of the month coming up, and there's other classes coming up as well. Finding Prosperity in a Gig Economy is one of the upcoming classes. It's going to be facilitated by Reverend Mike, starting on February 5th, Tuesday nights, for 8 weeks. And that will be meeting at 7 till 9 p.m. Oh, and there's the Emma Curtis Hopkins class. 12 Lessons to a New Transcendent You, starting Thursday, January 31st, for 6 weeks. Shortened it a little bit. Emma Curtis is a little intense and heavy, kind of, so it's just going to be a 6-week class. And then a writing class facilitated by Reverend Maureen coming up. It'll be a 7-week class also on Thursdays, beginning February 7th from 6 till 9. And that will be Writing for Profit and Pleasure. And I think that's all I got. It's wonderful to see you all. If you're new here, by the way, you're most welcome here. We're very happy to have you here. We do offer prayer after service in what used to be the bookstore. So if you're seeking to release something, thank you for that wonderful talk, being not attached to things. If you're seeking that and want to go deeper into that, grab one of us for prayer after service. There's also a prayer request form in your program, and you can put it in the box outside on the counter. And anything else I should say? Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. What? Okay, yes. Stand for the Declaration of Principles. We believe in one universal spirit manifesting through all, natural and incarnated in us. We believe that the universal spirit is personal to and reveals itself through everyone who recognizes its presence. We believe that our faith operates upon a law of mind, which automatically manifests in our experience according to that faith. We believe in the unity of all life and in the immortality of the individual soul forever expanding. We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the givingness of life to all.
I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I'm free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I'm free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. No more struggle, no more strife. I see the light. I'm free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I'm only here for God. One more time. I'm only here for God. Yeah.
All right, nicely done. You guys sound pretty good today. Why, thank you, Reverend Mike. Really appreciate being validated like that this morning. Well, what's so funny? I'm learning how to be a minister of ventriloquism. Yeah. Right? Right. Okay. So, welcome one and all, whether you're joining us online or here in the sanctuary this morning, you're most welcome. We welcome all who practice their beliefs and faith and love here at the Center for Spiritual Loving. Yes. And today is What It Does, and for those of you who, I just want to release any sense of anxiety. Game time isn't until another couple hours. It's also Dr. King's weekend, and I wanted to acknowledge that. So, and start out with this quote. Someone made it into a meme, and I really like this. Use me, God. Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am and who I want to be and what I can do and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Use me. So Ricky Byers, I guess, didn't write that the first time. Let's see. Why is this red? Because I pressed the wrong button. So Dr. Martin Luther King, minister first, minister turned activist, voting rights activist who championed, in time, also championed the working poor, regardless of race. He was one of the first to point out that there were a lot more working white folk than black folk, right? So that it was important to raise everyone. He was also on J. Edgar Hoover's list of undesirables. I remember when I was a kid hearing he was a communist because he dared to speak about the suffering of Vietnamese civilians at the time. And before all of that, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was a Christian minister. And he had the reason why he was Reverend Doctor was not because of an honorary doctorate, which I'm sure he had many, but that he earned his doctorate at Boston College, right? Like a real school, right? A real school, and in theology, in structural theology, actually. And his PhD thesis was this: a comparison of the conceptions of God in the thinking of Paul Tillich and Henry Nelson Wyman. Now this, to me, is interesting. So Paul Tillich was a great Lutheran theologian and teacher. And then Henry Nelson Wyman, I got curious because he spoke to this idea of religious naturalism. Religious naturalism, which is kind of ties into what the Transcendentalists were also doing when they looked out into, now they weren't the first, right? So the Greeks were talking about this stuff too, a couple thousand years ago. So it all goes back to Plato, right? But the idea that you could see the divine in nature, right? And certainly Thomas More and a lot of other Christian theologians spoke to this. So I just found it interesting that this was an area of interest first and then study of Dr. Martin Luther King. And of course, he was also an activist, ultimately turned martyr. And when I saw this prayer here, I was thinking that this would be a great prayer for any religious scientist. Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Dr. King had a vision that had a deep commitment to the exploration of truth and faith behind it. That his understanding of the teachings of Jesus, coupled with a very strong intellect and the power of reason, informed his crusade of racial equality and later his work in advocating for the poor. Now, the teacher, poet Ernest Holmes, who we study here at centers like this, the teacher, poet Ernest Holmes addressed this situation in a slightly different way, though I suspect that Dr. King would not have argued with the method, as both spoke to the need of taking self-responsibility. And King often spoke to this. Now, in his studies of structural theology, King undoubtedly, is my opinion, right? So he undoubtedly pondered the possibility of man's oneness with the Creator. That Holmes spoke to using that awareness of oneness, which both, I think, would agree to be the grace of the living Spirit to effect real change in the lives of the individual and also to effect change in the lives of others. And at the same time, let's face it, when it came to our understandings around racial strife and discrimination, we as a people could no longer afford to be patient. As a society, we could no longer afford to be patient waiting for the consciousness to catch up to the idea of justice for all, freedom and justice for all. Right? For the vision and the promise of the Declaration of Independence to be extended to all of our citizens. Right? And clearly today there's still work to be done. Right? For all people of color, not simply African Americans, there's something uniquely to their case. Right? But for all people to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. But we could no longer be patient for people to kind of come around to that way of thinking. It was time to address the consciousness of separate and unequal for our brothers and sisters of color, that we needed to codify the universal teachings of love, tolerance, and brotherhood from this Judeo-Christian ethic and try to capture that within the secular world. If you think about that, that's really what we strove to do. Right? To capture that and codify it in the U.S. legal system. because otherwise it wasn't going to happen. So that Holmes developed in his way. So that was the way we did it through activism in those days. And, you could make an argument that there's still work to be undone, even though we've had an African-American president now, which is pretty amazing in a pretty, within my lifetime that happened, right? But it's kind of sad, when the Civil War was over in 1865 and the Voting Rights Act didn't pass till 1965, right? So about time. And we still have work to do. Now, Holmes developed, in his way, he developed what was to be called, what we call today as the science of mind and spirit. And he asked these questions. So, if God is all power, why can't we use it? So we looked out into the natural world and saw, the ways, saw electricity, right, through lightning. Why can't we use that power? How can we use the power of gravity? How can we use hydraulic power, the power of water moving, right? In fact, as we became, as our knowledge of these principles and these laws of nature, as we became more adept in them, we were in fact able to use it. So if we can use that power, why can't we use God power? When we think about this idea of God not stuck up in the sky somewhere, a sky God separate from man, right? But if we really take to heart the teachings of the metaphysician a couple thousand years ago, when he said, receive the great comforter, the great counselor, that he left everyone with this idea of the Holy Spirit, right? A spirit that's not bound by the corporal world. That this spirit in things spiritual must be expressing itself through some energetic, let's call it mind, that as we see when we look into the outer world, and in our awe and understanding of that, we see some kind of an intelligence emerging and expressing and demonstrating itself in, through, and as all of life. Even human beings, although sometimes we don't look very intelligent, and we don't make very intelligent choices. But this too is part of the deal. This too is part of evolution. Evolution being a creative process. And as we are thinking beings, and if we are to posit that there is this field, call it what you will, but a field of thought demonstrating as all of the creation of the universe, as we are thinking beings, there must be some connection with this. Now, Holmes didn't really get into arguing all of the ifs and the ands and the buts about that. He just called it a self-evident truth, and then invited all of us to see how that may be true for us. So he talked about the many names of God. And so we explored this in the first week, right? So, pick one, add one, right? So, one of the ones that I like that's not up there is the architect of the universe, right? So you might see it that way, right? So whatever that emanation from whatever culture or tradition you may come from, whatever it is that resonates not as much up here in the mind, but here in the heart, in that way that's free of the intellect. And in fact, he said that it's important to have an experience of this, that he called the thing itself. So if God is all power, why can't we use it? And if we can use it, in what way does it work? And as it works, what is it doing? And finally, then, how can we use it? And as it happens, these are the first four Roman numeral chapters in the textbook. So week 1, we contemplated the thing itself. In the second week, we explored the idea. Last week, we explored the idea of the way it works. And what we found was we were introduced to an idea of law, that there are two aspects of the divine, not two minds, not two gods, one God, one conscious unity, expressing itself, bound only by the nature of its own being. This is the law. That we are introduced to the idea that there is a personal presence with which we commune with, and a law that responds to our thought and demonstrates itself into our experience by working not to us, but rather than expressing through us. So this is kind of a big departure. So we're no longer making prayers of petitions to a sky god or some god outside of ourselves, but instead knowing that the infinite power and presence of the divine is bound by nothing, and in this way is everywhere present, including right where we are, and that in some mysteriously cosmic, maybe even mysterious way to ourselves, that we are an emanation of that. And that even more than that, that we are the individualized expression of it. Right? So, and as we use our thought in conscious ways, we are impressing our thought. Our thought is received by this field, this divine field, and expresses that which we give our attention to the most, right? In the ways that are deeply subjectified. Right? So in the ways that not only our conscious mind, but our subconscious mind resonate with and say yes. And in this way, this is the law of our own being. That's the part that's resonating. So what this means then, of course, is that we have to acknowledge. We can't play let's pretend and not acknowledge that there are challenges that present themselves in life. Right? But this is not the work of a pernicious God punishing. We are not punished by our sin. For a sin is nothing more than an error in thought. That we are punished in not for our sins, but by our sins. Right? As the logical consequence of our thought. Expressing through the law as our life. So this is either a good news or a bad news thing. So even when we're going through a difficult time or a difficult challenge, there's actually a seed of good in that. Because what we are being directed to is the next indicated thing of that which we need to know a greater truth around. Now, what we know within the teaching of this thing is that what becomes key of working with this law, and we learn this in this chapter, is that we must become open and receptive to receive all the good that God is. So that in the old ways of thinking, there was a transactional relationship with the divine. That really was a reflection of our own relationships with each other. So think on all the many ways that our relationships and our dynamics are transactional. You love me, I love you. I give you $5, you give me a hamburger. Right? That I put together the right and correct sacrifice, and then I am blessed. It's transactional. Right? But if we understand and know that the power of the divine is infinite in nature, that we look around and we see the abundance of this divinity expressing itself in an infinite myriad of ways, Right, so the idea that you can't even count the grains of sand on a single beach, let alone on the planet, or the stars in the sky. That kind of power, infinite in nature, it's no longer transactional. It's just the Spirit through the law saying, here you go. Bound only by our receptivity to it. Bound only by this notion that we embody that thing that we're wanting to demonstrate. So for home, I have no idea where I am now. Oh, I guess I am here. So for while it is true that we are immersed in an infinite intelligence, a mind that knows all things, it is also true that this intelligence can acquaint us with its ideas only as we are able and willing to receive them. But what we draw from it, we must draw through the channel of our own minds. Through the channel of our own minds. So, boy, this is where the work is, because there's a couple things we want to do, right? We need to take some time to be still. To be still and to know, as the ancients said. To be still and know that I am. Right? And in this way, we can be infused with divine ideas. But at the same time, we learn in this chapter that mental treatment is not a passive thing. In fact, it's an active thing. And Holmes speaks many times to the idea that we do our treatment work, and then we are pulled into something that we may need to do to make this thing happen. Not to make it happen, really, but to allow it to happen. That it's a verb rather than a noun. There's an activity to it. It's active, not passive. Right? So we may be, speaking our word in an affirmative way of knowing a particular truth about our life. Right? But unless we really open up, and so how can we know that? For one thing, it's going to kind of resonate in here. Another thing, it's not going to be hoping. We're not hoping for anything. We're knowing the truth. So in this chapter, Holmes also says that hope is better than despair. But hope is a subtle illusion and an unconscious compromise. Right, so hope actually has doubt in it, yes? And doubt is the thing that really what we are healing. God is all there is. Not God and my egoic mind coming up with all the ways that that's not so. Because I have a very clever mind. And it knows a lot of stuff. In the world of healing, right? Healing the body temple, I can think of all the ways that disease and this and that and the molecular level and the blah, 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 blah. Because biology, I've always had an interest in that. This is beyond even that. Right? This is the power behind the power of biology. The power that holds an atom together when it really shouldn't. The power that is present in the smallest little quark, subatomic particle. That physicists are now telling us even that can be affected by thought. Right? A particle that can be both a particle and a wave simultaneously. Go figure that one out. Right? These guys are totally sounding like metaphysicians. What do you call them? Metaphysicists. So we may look around life. We may look around life, not here, but in other places, and see that our life may not be a perfect demonstration for good. We may start to think that we're not doing it right, or that we might need a different practitioner, or we might need a different church or a different teaching. Either we need to change our bait and go fish in some other pond. Right? That we need to reread the textbook. And I think sometimes what happens in this way is that we can get tangled up in our own thinking. That we can overthink things. Right? And the teaching, let's face it, it's very elegant in the way that it appeals to those of us who like to ponder things. And it also appeals to guys like me who are skeptical. Because Holmes says, hey, don't take my word for it. Could be something else. This is what I discovered. Try it and prove it to yourself. So I did. I used it in my construction company. Right? And after I started demonstrating really beyond my wildest dreams, where my partner and I are looking at each other, going, how the hell do we make all this money this year? I remember one time in that year, because I told him, because he was a strong practicing Roman Catholic. And we were trying to get work through the archdiocese and stuff. And he asked me what I was doing with my time. And I didn't want to get into the whole science of mind thing and deal, because he was from the Bronx. What are you doing, Michael? All right? So I didn't want to get into all that, so I just told him I was taking comparative religion classes. Right? It was just simpler. I wish my dad would accept that answer. Right? Right? But suddenly one day he comes to us, because he was kind of keeping an eye on the books and stuff. He was older than I was. And he says, I don't know what you're doing, but keep saying that rosary. It's working. And what I was doing was using the principles of religious science in my business. There's a power for good in the universe available to everyone. Even this personality who thought he was not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. I'd been saying that since I was 7 years old. Even that guy can demonstrate this thing. And in that demonstration then, the doubt began to wane, and I grew in confidence in using the law in other areas. This is the great promise for all of us. As it happened, I became a minister, but I promise you, I did not set up to be up here. I'm grateful this is where I ended up, because now I get to speak to this truth that I have proven in my own life. That's why I'm teaching this idea of finding prosperity in the gig economy. There's so many people now who don't have regular jobs. They're working under contract, right? They got a side hustle going on, right? Or even within the confines of salary, or what we see as restricted income, that there is an aspect to that the spiritual nature of life, the energetic of life, is expressing in, through, and as all of it. That Eric Butterworth called this spiritual economics. And that's actually what we're going to be studying. So it's a class for anyone, but I'm really wanting to invite and focus people from outside of our center, right? Including, and maybe even especially, agnostics, skeptics, as I was, to come and see that there is a hidden power already present in every business, in every venture, in every enterprise, in the enterprise of this body temple expressing as biological matter that is infinite in nature and expressing the perfection, a pattern of perfection that is in fact an expression of the divine mind itself, setting it all into motion. And it's changed my life, and I've witnessed it change the lives of scores of, well, maybe 1,000 people by now. The intelligence by which we perceive there is a spiritual presence in an infinite mind in the universe constitutes our receptivity, and that's what decides its flow. So I'm the thing that has to constantly open up. I'm the thing that needs to keep opening that valve of my good. I'm the thing who needs to stop going to the Spirit with a teaspoon and bring a 5-gallon bucket. I'm the guy who needs to stop going to the flow of life with the 5-gallon bucket and just divert the whole thing into my life. Using the creative intelligence even to do that. It might be through writing a book or writing a song. Right? Who knows? We're playing in a field of infinite possibilities for good. How that's going to work for you is your own divine unfoldment and your own exciting and dynamic expression of the divine expressing as your life. And you know when that happens? I'm going to go, yay for you! And you're going to have 100 people in this community saying, yay for you! Because what we understand is that we're really saying, yay for us. We're demonstrating the power and presence of the divine as this spiritual community, individualized maybe, right? But in this way we're all raised. We're all raised. We're all blessed. We're all blessed. So, did you give me a red light? I think it's broken, man. Either that or the Holy Ghost broke it. All right, so let's call the musicians up here. So in this way, we want to pay attention to what we're paying attention to. Right? What's demonstrating is the tendency of our thought. And not just any thought, but that thought that is resonating, that there's no conflict between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. At the same time, we understand and know that trained thought is far more powerful than untrained thought. And so we begin by focusing our attention and allowing a willingness to have an experience with the divine that maybe is just a little more different, a little deeper, more dynamic than what we had when we came in here this morning. That we can play around with that today. To be still and to know that we are one with the great I am of the universe that so loved itself, that so longed to experience its creation of life, that it created you in its image and likeness so that it may have an experience of itself as you. So let's start acting like it and come back and report next week. See how it went.
The Spirit is in this place. still and know. Oh, oh, be still and know. The Spirit is in this place. As we sing into the Spirit with a true and sincere heart, the Holy One is come to embrace the broken heart, renewing our mind, healing sickness of every kind, willing to strengthen your soul. If you say, Spirit, make me whole, all things are possible because the Spirit is in this place. The Spirit is in this place. Be still and know. Be still and know, God. Be still and know, yeah. Be still and know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Do you know? Be still and know. Stand still with your feet dug deep in the earth. Be still and know. No, no. God is. Be still and know. You got to know. You got to know. Be still and know. God is. Be still and know. The Spirit is in this place. Oh, yes. God is in this place.
Yeah, we're blessed here. Thank you very much, Angela. Yes. You know, I know we have teachers who are striking out there. I just wanted to give a shout out to our musicians in this way. So I hope they find a way to get some money from music back into the schools, because what we see here every Sunday is music literacy. I'm serious. These guys are professionals and they know their stuff, and I just so appreciate that. Yeah, really showed itself today. Thanks, guys. All right, so as we prepare our gifts for the offering, we'll call our ushers forward, along with the birthday boy.
Spirit gives through me, Spirit receives through me, Spirit lives and breathes through me. Spirit lives and breathes through me.
The eternal Om. All right, so going within for just a moment longer, recognizing and knowing together that the gifts presented here this morning, whether here in these baskets or online, that they are a demonstration of consciousness that knows and knows that it knows that God is our source, our substance, our supply. And so from the generous heart of the individual, as evidenced by these gifts here this morning, we, representing the heart of this spiritual community, accept these gifts with deep love, respect, and appreciation as we know together they go forth to heal, to prosper, and to bless the lives of each person here this morning, the lives of any person connected to our center in any way, that we extend this blessing and good tidings to our friends here in our community of Granada Hills, our city of Los Angeles, our state of California, our United States of America, all of its churches, temples, mosques, schools, universities, the people who attend them, the people who support them. For our planet as well, that we know that all of it is a demonstration, is an emanation from the mind of the divine itself. And to the extent that we know this to be so, we see it demonstrating in all ways great and small. This lifts our hearts. We feel a sense of power and grace that propels us into ways of spiritual living that not only raise ourselves, but others as well. And that's a good thing. And together we acknowledge this by saying, and so it is. So please help me thank lovely Rita and the birthday boy, Michael Carlin himself. Hi, kids.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So today's the big day. Brady. Hey, Brady. Brady's playing today. Right? Oh, can we have a little more of that? The ESPN theme. That's for you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Tell everybody who you are again.
I'm Akira.
Akira.
My name's Ayana.
Ayana. And what'd you guys do today?
Today we talked about manifestations and like how Martin Luther King had a dream. So if we all think something will happen, then it will.
Nice. Yeah. Boy, you're getting tall. Would you like to add anything, Ayana? Or are you just up here looking good?
No.
Just being cute?
No.
No, yes, you are. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for teachers for being here. Thank you, parents, for bringing them. It's great to have them here today. So, it was. I wanted to share this with you. Call our practitioner forward. Invite our practitioners and ministers to circle the room. And I just wanted to share this poem.
Yes.
Before Suzanne's going to pray us out. Suzanne Jensen's going to pray us out.
Okay.
You're going to do the closing. I'm just going to read this poem because Mary Oliver died this week, so I wanted to share this. So Mary Oliver was a poet, and she wrote this. I happened to be standing is the name of the poem. I don't know where prayers go or what they do. Do cats pray while they sleep, half asleep in the sun? Does the opossum pray as it crosses the street? The sunflowers, the old black oak growing older every year? I know I can walk through the world, along the shore or under the trees, with my mind filled with things of little importance, in full self-attendance. A condition I can't really call being alive. Is a prayer a gift or a petition, or does it matter? The sunflowers blaze. Maybe that's their way. Maybe the cats are sound asleep. Maybe not. While I was thinking this happened to be, while I was thinking this, I happened to be standing just outside my door with my notebook open, which is the way I begin every morning. Then a wren in the privet began to sing. He was positively drenched in enthusiasm. I don't know why. And yet, why not? And so it is. Maybe we'll make that our closing truth. All right. let's sing and get on out of here.
Please stand for the peace song.